Okay, at this point, we're going to be pleased to kind of welcome our second guest. By popular demand, a lot of people saw that I tweeted out the fact that Harris Kupperman, the author of Adventures in Capitalism, tweeted out something about his latest pick, and I tweeted it out, and a lot of people were like, you got to get him back on. And so without further ado, here is Kuppy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on again. It's great to hear from you. I actually loved the first piece, the piece you just wrote, because you reference yourself as a macro tourist, and I thought,
I know you'd like that.
yeah, I was like, oh, that's the guy's like that's a near and dear to my heart. So why don't you tell us about it? You know, I think last time we spoke, you were actually phoning from that same trip, I believe, or maybe I was wrong. But why don't you tell us about your latest pick?
Sure. So Greece has basically had a 10-year economic crisis, partly self-inflicted, actually mostly self-inflicted. Every time it seemed that they were getting out of the crisis, they found a new way to come back into the crisis. Things were starting to recover a few years ago, and they decided to try Grexit. And then they decided, they didn't really want Grexit, but they'd scared all the investors off again. And so anyway, you've had sort of this lame duck government there, the socialist government that tried Grexit, failed at Grexit, has a bunch of internal feuding themselves, basically strangled the economy with high taxes and high regulations and all these things that the Eurozone wanted in order to stabilize the finances of Greece.
That's right. Wasn't that the Troika that demanded that from them?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and I mean, you can't solve a debt crisis with more debt. You can't, no matter what, you have to outgrow your liabilities. And trying to have a 1% budget surplus when you have 190% debt to GDP, I mean, to get to something stable is going to take you 100 years. It's just not possible.
Right.
And so they tried it for a decade anyway. They proceeded to bankrupt all the banks about 3 times. I mean, there's a lot of guys who bought the second bailout and thought they were getting the real bargain, and they didn't realize there was going to be 1 or 2 more bailouts.
It's like one of those restaurants, like the restaurants where like you always say you're supposed to make money on a restaurant by buying it after someone goes bankrupt, but it's like a location that goes bankrupt 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, Fairfax might have done like 6 bailouts of some of these banks. I mean, we talked about this last time. It's not exactly like the Greek bankers were really playing along. When you met them, they're like, yeah, we got this under control. Don't worry about it. But over the weekend, I was looking at some of my charts and looking at some of my information on the Greek banks, just trying to get caught up. And it's amazing how little of the non-performing exposures they've actually solved over the past year and a half since I was there last time. It's almost like they didn't want to kick their friends out of these houses.
Almost like.
So they just did nothing and sat there.
Yeah. Right? So now what's changed? What's made you excited about Greek? Because like you're painting a picture where it's ugly, but what's changed?
Well, I mean, it's terrible right now, but it's going to get better. You have this political party called New Democracy. Think of them like your free market, pro-business guys. Their platform is cutting taxes, reducing regulations, getting a bunch of, mega projects moved forward. I mean, when I was there a year and a half ago, they were arguing about this stupid airport. So the Athens airport doesn't have the capacity for all the tourists to land. And most of the Greek economy is Chinese people going to see the Parthenon. So if you can't get more tourists, the whole economy can't grow. And at the time I was there was 3 archaeologists that were holding up a $5 or $10 billion airport because they said there might be something of archaeological significance where they wanted to build the airport. And so they were given, I think it was like a 5 or 10-year window to go look for stuff. And of course, the entire economy froze because there's some pottery shards. And it's just one of these like typical Greek things where everyone stands in the way. It's a cultural thing. Everyone stands in the way looking for a payoff to get out of the way. And so anyway, this New Democracy group, they're kind of the view that they're actually going to get these projects moved forward. They're going to build infrastructure, power plants, all these good things that are good for the economy. I don't know if they're actually going to succeed. I mean, running a country is very hard. Talking about your plan is easy. But what we've seen happen multiple times in emerging markets, particularly ones where they're really, really beat down, is that when the new guys come in, and the new guys have a plan that makes sense. The new guys can articulate that plan in London and New York and talk to iBankers. You can get a lot of Wall Street types on side, and they can say, I'm looking at this Greek ETF, and 5 years ago it was at 25. Today it's at $9. There's a lot of upside, and you kind of draw your charts back further, and you see more upside. And I think this is going to be a lot like Argentina. Argentina, I mean, the joke about Argentina is that about every decade they have an economic crisis, and it seems to last about 10 years. And you guys have heard that one, right?
No, I haven't. That's a great line, bud. Like, it is awesome.
So anyway, like, that's Argentina for you. But this fella Macri came along, and he said all the right things. And if you held for 2 years, you doubled your money. And along the way, they've devalued the currency. They have runaway inflation. Half his plans haven't really worked. He's got a bunch of political roadblocks. It's questionable if he's going to stay in power in the future. Like, it hasn't really worked. But he said all the right things, and the ETF doubled anyway. And, I mean, if you look at this in, like, Brazil with their new guy, like, if they say the right things, the market goes up because foreign investors want to believe. And with Greece as beat down as it is, and with these guys, I think being great at telling the story of their plan, I think you're going to have a recovery. I've traveled to every country. I travel nonstop to funny places that are having crises. And the only time in my life that I've ever seen an opposition party having a resting order with a broker, where my broker just, we'd seen some of these banks, and my broker said, we're going to go meet with New Democracy. We're going to meet, probably shouldn't say who, but one of the most senior guys in the party. He wants you to come to his office. He's a member of parliament. And I said, why does this guy want to meet me? I'm kind of a nobody. Like, I'm not going to do anything in Greece. I mean, I don't even intend to open a brokerage account. And my broker said, yeah, just come, trust me. We sat there for 2.5 hours talking about what their plans were for New Democracy and when they came to power. And I thought it was the most amazing thing. I kind of said to myself, if these guys ever win an election, I want to be long. And I asked this guy, why would you waste your time with me? And he just said, when we win, and we know we're going to win, we want you to be aware of us so that you can go and invest. And I think he was thinking go and invest, meaning I'll do some PE deal or, go buy a hotel and operate it myself. And I don't think he really meant I was going to buy GREK, but it's the same sort of concept. As capital comes into the country, it helps everyone. And I just thought it was interesting that he wanted to make that point that he was so pro-business that he was kind of preceding it by 2 years. So anyway, what just happened is this week they announced snap elections, and it's about 6 months early. And it looks like New Democracy is going to win by a landslide and become the largest party in parliament. And I don't think a lot of people outside Greece, because most people don't follow Greek politics, I don't think most of these guys have a clue who these people are. And as people learn who New Democracy is and what they stand for, I think you're going to have a trade higher. I mean, we've already seen it for 3 days in a row where the Greek stock market's been up a few percent each day.
Yeah.
I think that trend's going to continue for a while because it's not a liquid market. It's super bombed out. There's a lot of capital that sloshes around with hedge funds, a lot of trend following guys. And I mean, think of Greece, okay? They did everything they could to screw up the country. Like, they went back and forth for a decade on, do we want Brexit or not? I mean, what do you think that does to liquidity in your banking system, like your whole financial system, when every 3 months you're like, yeah, we think we're going to do drachma this month. No, let's do it next month. And, it was just terrible. But for the last 5 years, they can't hit the stock market anymore. It just won't go down. No matter what stupid stuff they dream up, it won't go down. And that usually tells you it's kind of bombed out and it's in super strong hands, because if you were willing to own it knowing you're getting drachma, I mean, you're strong hands. So I don't think there's a lot of free floating liquidity. So as some of this capital flows back into Greece, it should lift the market quite a lot. And Argentina shows what happens when a small market sees some fund flows. You had a double.
Yeah. Right. So, Kuppy, one second. I'm going to interrupt. It's Kevin. I read your post and you sold me, buddy. I ran out and bought some. I completely agree. That this thing could run a long way. I don't think it would take much to move this market. It's a small market, like you said. Like this thing, It doesn't trade that much. The like the market capitalization, I bet you Apple could buy Greece tomorrow if they wanted to.
Yeah, no, it lost.
Hey guys,
I think 99% of its capitalization was wiped out during the last decade, right? Like, it's crazy. Like, I have a chart up here of the Alpha Bank. Hold on, let me pull this up, and
that's another winner.
uh, like. This thing at its peak was $480 back in 2007, and it's 42 cents today.
Yeah, it looks like the VIX chart,
Yeah,
the VXX. Like when you own the VXX and you put that chart up.
it's like this is
the wealth
crazy.
destruction. Your question is: have people lost more money being long VXX or the Alpha Bank? It's going to be a tough one to decide.
It's going to be a tough one to decide. But I mean, when you're starting off at such a low base, I mean, that's where, like I was saying, that this is where value investors can go shopping all day long. I mean, they've bled this out and left it for dead. So I mean, at this stage, you have a lot of things that can go right, and a lot of the really worst case scenarios have been more or less baked into the cake, right?
Don't say that. It's Greece. They'll find a way to screw it up.
So,
I mean,
Kuppy, I want to tell you something.
What's the stat on Greece? They've been an independent country for a little over 100 years, and like 80 of those years they were restructuring their debts or something, and they've only been like current for like 20% of their time as a nation, or some crazy statistic like that.
When I tweeted out your comment, your post, I saw somebody saying something to the effect that. I think this fellow had been long, but he was selling it, and he was a Greek, and he said something to the effect that like we're gonna find a way to screw it up, kind of to that line. And I thought to myself, you know that Don Cox. I don't know if you know Don Cox is a strategist in Canada, and he has this line. He says, "Those who know it best love it least because they've been burned the worst." Yeah. And I think that's a very fitting comment here because to me it feels like everybody has given up. There is nobody left to buy it. Like, I saw in Real Vision a year ago this very persuasive kind of argument that you should buy Greek banks. It's been a hedge fund darling, and I thought it was kind of funny that you said that they bought two of the last three restructurings, thinking this is the time. And
it's been a graveyard of hedge funds,
right? And you're the only guy. You're so lonely. Recommending this. I love it. I love it that you're all alone. Nobody's talking about it. These are the kind of trades.
How many years ago was it that Kyle Bass was doing the green shoots in Greece?
2014, he did his first bailout. He's been around for 2 or 3 recaps. He's in Piraeus Bank. He's done 2, 3, 4. I don't know. Actually, it was funny. I met the CFO of Piraeus Bank. I think that's the one he's in. Let me just make sure. And I think it's that one. No. Paulson's in Piraeus. And anyway, I met the CFO, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. You've met Paulson?" He's like, "Yeah, we've met him every time we've restructured. It's great. He always comes." It's like he takes an annual trip to Greece and gives us more money. It's great. Keep in mind, though, I have 2 Greek readers, so I always appreciate what my readers on Adventures in Capitalism say. 2 of my Greek readers wrote me back immediately, and they said, "Kuppy, be careful. We're Greek. We're probably going to screw you."
No, but even they're bearish. They're thinking, like, I'm telling you, there's nobody is bullish. You were the only guy. You were so lonely. It's almost worse. It is worse than my short bond call. Like that's how lonely you are. You're all alone there in the wilderness, just saying, buy it. I think it is a great call. I'm giving it a whirl because I think what's
the timing?
Yeah.
I mean, a year and a half ago I was there, and it was just obvious that there was nothing to do. Things were cheap, but there was nothing to do. You need that catalyst because if nothing good is happening, something bad might happen. I think you have a free shot between now and the elections next 6 weeks. See the stock trade up, and then see how much of a majority, how many seats they get in Parliament, to see basically how much it might trade up in the future. I spent a lot of time. I went with a couple friends to Greece, and we were talking through all the names and all our notes. And my friends he was just going down the list, and my friends were like, "Nah, that sucks. No, those people seem like crooks. Nah, I don't want to own those shares. Nah, that sucks." So that's why I bought GREK, because there's absolutely no one stock I want to own. We went through all the big ones, and they all suck. So you might as well just have a basket of big ones.
A basket of sucky stocks.
A basket of sucky stocks, yes.
Uh,
That's my new fang.
Okay, well, anyways, Harris, thank you very much for joining us. It's great to hear your story. Actually, before we leave you have any updates on Sting for us? Like, since I know you've created a lot of loyal Huddle fans, because when we, I think we had our podcast and you appeared and the thing ran like it stole something. Like it just took off. And
Yeah, I like that phrase.
yeah, so maybe you'll be two times lucky. Do you have any updates for us on Sting?
Yeah, so Sting basically good Q1 earnings. They beat where I thought they'd be. Since then, charter rates have dipped. I think they're going to be a little soft in Q2. I took a few off the table. The chart looks great. It's a nice big base. And it's building a flag, but I took a few off the table just because. Well, I mean, I'm up what 50% on a very large position, and the rates are a little weak. I think rates will start spiking though in the next month or two. And as we get into IMO 2020, they'll probably just keep building up. So if the stock doesn't pull back at all, I'll probably add back what I sold. If not, hopefully I get a little bit of a pullback. But things are looking good. Nothing's changed in the thesis.
One last thing, you don't worry about the trade war, because ultimately that'll mean less world trade.
Well, trade wars are good for shipping. Remember that. I think it's this real misnomer that trade wars are bad. Yeah, if you're talking about like containers or something, yes, because you're going to have less stuff going to Walmart. But if you're thinking of a trade war and we're going to say Iranian oil can't go to this place, and Venezuela isn't allowed to have refined products, so it has to come from this. Every time you move something around the map, you make it less efficient. And when it becomes less efficient, you need more ton miles to move the same amount of product, because Venezuela still needs refined product and Iran is still going to sell oil somehow. And so as you make the whole supply chain less efficient globally, you need more boats. And more boats needed means higher charter rates.
Wow.
Because the number of boats.
That's like that's counterintuitive thinking. That's I never thought of it that way. That's
I love it.
And you also get huge amounts of bottlenecks where you have boats sitting out at a port because a port's designed for X number of boats, and suddenly twice as many boats show up because you've moved all the supply chains around, and you have boats sitting there 3-4 days waiting to unload or reload, which also uses up supply. Remember, when you think of supply in this industry, your supply is number of boats on the water times number of days that the boats are serviceable.
Right.
And so if you're wasting 3-4 days here, you start taking away global supply really fast.
Right.
Well, there you go. So taking a little off the table on Sting, but you're looking for a dip that you're going to buy again, or if it keeps going, you're going to jump back in. Is that the end of the kind of the synopsis?
I mean, I still exactly. I still have 75%. Look, it was better than 20% position when I put it on. It went up more than 50%, and humans aren't meant. I mean, portfolio managers aren't supposed to have positions that start with a 3 in terms of position weighting. It's you got to be prudent at some point. So that's the reason I cut it back a little. But it's still 75% of what I had.
Kuppy, you assume that portfolio managers are human.
See, I play super concentrated positions, but when you get to 30, you got to cut it back.
I hear
you.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay, so listen, thank you so much for joining us. For those who want to learn more about you and kind of follow you, what's the best place to reach you?
Adventures in Capitalism is my blog. Sign up for updates. Otherwise, reach out to me directly. Kuppy at Adventures in Capitalism.
Well, thanks again. It was great having you on.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
Kuppy.
guys.
Cheers.